ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining Orange County's Business Council's 20th Annual Workforce Development Conference virtually. I'm Sherry Battle, Senior Vice President, Market Executive here for Orange County and for Bank of America, and also the chair of our your OCBC Workforce Development Committee and your MC for today. The pandemic has changed the way many of us has conducted business, and this year's OCBC Workforce Development Conference theme is Workforce Skills and Strategies for a Resilient OC. It aligns with business strategy, how our workplaces and workforce may need to operate for 2021 and beyond. We have a fantastic panel featuring our largest employers here in Orange County ready to discuss workplace transformation and what it means for our county. But before we begin this pivotal discussion, a bit of housekeeping. In order to optimize our speakers' time, our introductions will be brief. However, you can find their full bios in the event program linked in the chat. Additionally, there'll be an audience Q&A. So please drop questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We'll try our best to get through as many of the questions as possible, as we've already received a significant number of questions from individuals during registration. But before we get to the program, I'd like to acknowledge Union Bank, the title sponsor of today's event. Thank you so much, Union Bank, for your generous support of the 2021 Workforce Development Conference and the enduring commitment to develop a strong workforce here in Orange County. I'd also like to acknowledge some of the other terrific organizations supporting today's conference, and they include our gold sponsors, Amazon, Cal State Fullerton, Goodwill of Orange County, Los Angeles Orange County Regional Consortium, and Verizon. And for our silver sponsor, we have Wells Fargo. So now it's my pleasure to introduce today's featured speaker, Dr. Wallace Walrod, Chief Economic Advisor for the Orange County Business Council. For those of you who don't know Wallace, he has been the head of OCBC's Research Development and Chief Economic Advisor for 25 years. He's the founding president of the Center for New California, which plays a key role in shaping the state's economic future by focusing on workforce development, economic development, infrastructure, and emerging trends in corporate social responsibility, as well as the lead economic advisor to the Southern California Association of Governments. He graduated with a PhD in regional economics from our very own UCI. This morning, Dr. Walrod will share with us labor market trends and forecasts for a handful of industries working to propel Orange County's economy. With that, Wallace, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sherry. And hello and welcome everybody. It's great to be here this morning, and it's going to be my great pleasure to walk you through a few slides that will look at some of Orange County's most promising emerging tech clusters. Well, let's dive right in. In terms of remote work, the genie is not going back into the bottle. And so we're talking about tomorrow's jobs today. The fact that we're even virtual today rather than in a physical conference space speaks a lot to the profound impact COVID has had on greatly accelerating technological change. But before these industries of the future, let's take a look at Orange County's past. From the space program to computer gaming to virtual reality to AI, Orange County has a long and continuing history of innovation. We can be proud of that. We'll begin with a place that put Orange County on the map, Disneyland. The Enchanted Tiki Room, which launched in 1961, featured the world's first animatronics, described in the poster you see on the left there as an astonishing cast of audio animatronic personalities. And on the right, you can see Walt Disney examining an animatronic pirate for Pirates of the Caribbean circa 1966. So we've been at this game of innovation a long time. We also have a long history in flight, space, aerospace, and defense. Pictured here is the Apollo 11 S2 rocket booster, which was developed and built in Seal Beach. And Skylab, launched in 1973, I remember when I was a kid, so excited, was the first American space station. It was built around a modified Saturn V rocket built by McDonnell Douglas facility in Huntington Beach. Skylab proved to us all that human beings can survive in space for weeks or even months at a time. And Blizzard Entertainment, while not the very first examples of their genre, Blizzard's Warcraft series helped popularize two key computer gaming genres, the real-time strategy game, or RTS, and the massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MMORPG. World of Warcraft, on the right, has had an active community for almost 2 decades, peaking at more than 12 million subscribers in 2010, and it has had 8 expansion packs. And 2 of the early researchers into climate change were UC Irvine professors Sherry Rowland and Mario Molina, who won the 1995 Nobel Prize for their work in chemistry on ozone. Quite an honor for UCI. But also in 1995, UCI had the rare distinction of multiple laureates in different fields in the same year. It's quite an unusual occurrence. Frederick Rains was awarded for particle physics for first detecting the neutrino. And Erwin Rose also won the Nobel in 2004 for biochemistry. Oculus VR began life as a Kickstarter-funded Irvine startup. Facebook bought it for $2.3 billion in 2014. And how many of you are using a Linksys router today to attend this meeting? Linksys was founded by Taiwanese immigrants Victor and Janie Tsao in their Irvine garage in 1988. 15 years later, Cisco bought the company for $500 million. And as you can see in the corner of the router image, Linksys was the world's first company to sell 100 million routers. So we have a very rich and robust history of past innovation. Let's look at today and the future. So now we're on to the 5 emerging sectors that we want to highlight today. First, cybersecurity. McKinsey analysts point out that few corporate functions shifted priorities so much and so quickly when the COVID crisis struck as corporate cybersecurity operations and the technology providers that support them. And as you can see on the right, Orange County cybersecurity job growth is projected to see continued growth over the next 5 years, although I believe this likely underestimates the speed and magnitude of future growth. Cybersecurity jobs are in high demand in a wide variety of industries, as we'll see on the next slide. As you'll see throughout this presentation, each of these 5 emerging industry clusters has employment that cuts across various industries and occupations. So employment here is not just in cybersecurity firms themselves, but a really diverse mix of companies and industries that are looking for cybersecurity workers. And some of those industries include consulting, aerospace, real estate, financial services, telecommunications, and even an automotive company. By the way, Rivian is an EV, SUV, and truck manufacturer. Their first product is called Cybertruck, which I love that name. The pandemic shifted so much of education, entertainment, shopping, healthcare, and many other things online that this has significantly increased cybersecurity vulnerability and also demand for new jobs. Orange County educators have begun to prepare our students for future cybersecurity employment. UCI is an NSA designated center of academic excellence. Cal State Fullerton and Orange County's community colleges are also stepping up. In fact, of the 7 community colleges with an NSA designation in California, 2 are in Orange County. And demand will likely continue to grow because of this increased vulnerability. Just think, for example, of how much banking has switched online over just say the past 5 or 10 years. An increased use of telehealth, remote work post-pandemic, distance learning will also likely fuel a need for more and more cybersecurity professionals. Now on to artificial intelligence, or AI. Like cybersecurity, AI is less of an industry and more of a group of occupations, skills, and processes that cut across many industries. This list on the right is just a small sample of what is a rapidly growing industry. Orange County's AI tech ecosystem is robust with entrepreneurs and startups. Again, a variety of Orange County employers in very diverse industries are hiring AI workers, from defense contractors to accounting firms, financial services, one of our sponsors today, Amazon, and interestingly, yes, Chipotle. I would love to know what that's about. This list will likely become even more diverse in the next few years as AI gains more and more traction in commercial uses. County educators at all levels, college and university, K through 12, have begun in earnest to address the demand for AI-related skills in the workplace. UCI's Center for AI in Diagnostic Medicine, their mission is to empower healthcare providers, researchers, and patients through the deployment of AI healthcare applications. And UCI's Center for Machine Learning and Intelligent Systems brings together AI researchers whose work is very diverse, and it goes from search engines to astronomy to genomics. And finally, Santa Ana College and Anaheim Union High School District have also instituted AI programs. And I'm sure there are a few that are not on this slide as well. In fact, OCBC is partnering with the Orange County Department of Education and OC Pathways on professional development in automation and AI for K through 12. That's for our sessions are for superintendents, principals, administrators, counselors, teachers, and of course, students. And the series kicked off yesterday and will continue for 12 months. Now on to computer gaming. It is thriving in Orange County, particularly Irvine, which is home to multiple major game developers, most notably Blizzard. Other Orange County game developers include Blind Squirrel Games, Bonfire Entertainment, and Turtle Rock Studios. And cultivating this industry in Orange County and preparing students for industry employment is crucial due to its rapid growth, which has only been accelerated by the pandemic. As noted by economist Tyler Cowen in a recent Bloomberg article, global gaming revenue now totals approximately $179 billion, more than the global film industry and professional sports in North America combined. As you can see, Orange County game developers generate a diverse mix of well-paid jobs, from software developers, computer programmers, quality assurance analysts, to animators and graphic designers. So it's a tremendous example of STEM becoming STEAM, as art is a very big part of computer gaming. And Orange County colleges and universities have really been leaders in creating gaming-related curricula. In fact, I think there were pioneers in this, our Orange County educational institutions. Many of these programs were created with significant input from game developers, such as UC Irvine's esports certificate program has program advisors from Twitch, Valve, Treyarch, and Blizzard. It is not hyperbole to say that Orange County really is a national and perhaps international leader in this field. Next, number 4 on our list is the ophthalmic industry. It ties into Orange County's strength in medical device manufacturing, which is 5.3 times as concentrated in Orange County as the rest of the US. And that makes us the nation's leader in this. And similarly, ophthalmology is more than 4 times as concentrated in Orange County versus the national average. It's also a very good example of a high-tech industry that actually manufactures a significant amount of their product in Orange County. You can tell that from the occupations on the last slide. UCI is obviously the county leader in related education to ophthalmics and ophthalmology. And I think that the US's aging population with the ensuing health issues, including those that are eye-related, likely necessitates a much larger pipeline. We need to inform Orange County students about education and career opportunities in this growing field, great paying jobs as well. More Orange County students in K through 12 and community colleges need to hear about this and become aware of this opportunity. And finally, drones. You can see the El Pollo Loco drone delivery system called Air Loco there. Research and market analysts predict that the global drone industry will reach a value of $85 billion by 2025. And you can see from Goldman Sachs projection, that is a tremendous ramp up from where the industry is now. This is probably the most emerging cluster of the 5 that I'll be talking about today. And this is a drone photo from Dronegenuity, which does a lot of work in the real estate industry. Drone firms like them already have a very strong presence in Orange County. But the public sector is also taking advantage of drone technology as well. In Laguna Beach, drones are being used by the police department for surveillance, allowing the officers to monitor from an aerial perspective. According to the department, drones are a much cheaper alternative to helicopters and provide quick responses in search and rescues. And Edison, and I'm sure other utilities, have started to use drones as fire monitors. A good example of what's going on in education and training here is the Autonomous Systems Collaborative. It's a great example at the community college level. For example, Orange Coast College's mission with this program is to provide an ecosystem for students. It's finding the points of interaction between this drone technology, the way jobs are emerging across all these sectors, and then finding the points that match. And I think that's a great overarching vision for how we should take a look at what we should do with the knowledge that these are 5 emerging sectors. And then there's the California Drone Connect program. It's an interactive map that displays all of the middle schools, high schools, community colleges, and state universities in California with drone programs. Those are expanding rapidly. Students love this sector. That website is searchable by sector. Students can survey course offerings at all the schools listed, and even better, they can also pinpoint regional businesses that are hiring. Speaking of hiring, when searching drones as a keyword in the job posting analytics that we monitor, reveals a total of 253 unique job postings over the past year in Orange County. And I think that this curve is going to steepen. Drones are just at an inflection point. The median advertised salary for these positions was almost $90,000 per year. Well, that's my last slide. In closing, my final thought on these emerging sectors and great opportunities is that the job openings and career pathways are there. Orange County educational institutions have done a really good job of creating programs and courses and building pipelines. Now it's all about informing and inspiring students to pursue these growing fields in much, much greater numbers than we're currently seeing. All 5 are really catalysts for student engagement and student excitement about the educational process. With that, thank you for your attention. I'm going to turn it back over to Sherry Battle, and looking forward to hearing from our great panel today. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Wallace. Such insightful information. I grew up in Orange County, and I, like you, was excited about the space station when my dad was working for McDonnell Douglas. But to think of the excitement that we have going forward for us with Orange County with some of these innovative sectors is really, really exciting and critical for Orange County's economy. Absolutely. So with that, to get to our next group of speakers, I'd like to welcome Robin Enrique Preciado, our regional president and managing director of Union Bank. She's also our past chair of OCBC and our moderator for this morning's panel. Robin oversees Union Bank's Southern California retail banking division, including Orange County, the South Bay, and the Inland Empire. And she has more than 30 years of financial services experience. So Robin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sherry. And good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be with you once again this year to moderate this very important discussion with this distinguished panel of experts. This is an event Union Bank has been sponsoring for many years, and we are thrilled to be here once again as the title sponsor. Union Bank has a rich history here in Orange County and throughout the West Coast for supporting local businesses and the economy at large. We have a lot of highlights over our 150 plus years, but today I'd like to share just a couple recent highlights. Throughout the pandemic, Union Bank helped more than 21,000 business clients secure much needed Paycheck Protection Program loans for more than $3.1 billion in funding. As a matter of fact, that's the equivalent of processing 7 years worth of loans in just 8 weeks. Now we are assisting with the loan forgiveness process. We also introduced the MUFG Union Bank Community Recovery Program last year, which is a $10 million initiative to support nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to social and economic justice within communities of color. This program has 4 focus areas: small business, rebuilding the workforce, financial education, and driving equity. Hot off the presses 2 days ago from a recent report, I'm proud to share that we have already given more than 60% of the total grants to 300 organizations across the U.S. And over half of the grantees are for small business support and job training. Locally, 25 grants for over $400,000 are going to organizations here in Orange County, and I know we can do more. So check it out at communityrecovery@unionbank.com. We know that despite the many setbacks businesses and our society at large have faced over the last year and a half, a lot of innovation and growth is also underway. Many companies have made important adjustments to their business plans and are reimagining how they serve their customers. And we will hear more from our panelists on this topic and more. In summary, Union Bank is a community bank, and what sets us apart is our people and the relationships we build. In fact, American Banker recently ranked us among the top 10 financial firms customers admire most, and that's an honor we are very proud of because it speaks to our client service, our role in the community, and expertise we bring to the table. One quote that resonated with me said, "Union Bank rated high with customers, not just of its sophisticated product offerings, but after all, for its ethical business practices and being a positive force in the communities it serves." As you may have heard, we will soon be joining the US Bank family, and while our brand will change, our commitment to our clients and communities never will. So, fellow OCBC Director Joe Hensley and I may be working closely together very soon. This is an event I have personally been involved in for nearly 10 years, and that Union Bank has been proud to sponsor for just about as long. I might also add that locally, and here, I'm a Huntington Beach resident, we are exploring ways to support the community efforts in Huntington Beach and across the Southern California coastline in response to the oil spill. All right, so now I'm honored to switch gears and serve as your moderator for this discussion today. So first, let me introduce you to our panelists. This is a diverse starting lineup. So lead off is Nicole Sudam, President and CEO, Goodwill of Orange County. Nicole has served in her role since 2018. Prior to returning to Goodwill, Nicole served as CEO of Second Harvest Food Bank of Orange County, where she oversaw the distribution of more than 25 million meals to Orange County families and guided a vast network of more than 200 community partners. She also serves on Vanguard University's Board of Trustees, her alma mater, and she's a fellow Board of Director on the Orange County Business Council. Welcome, Nicole. Next, we have Chris Bissonette, Director of Labor Relations and Wellness for Southern California Gas Company, with over 20 years experience in all aspects of human resources, labor relations, diversity and inclusion in a variety of environments. Chris is a graduate of Hofstra University and Northeastern University School of Law. He also holds a certification as a Senior Certified Professional through the Society for Human Resources Professionals. Welcome, Chris. Finally, we have Jennifer Van Ursel, Assistant Vice President, Talent Acquisition, Pacific Life Insurance Company. In this role, Jennifer provides overall leadership and strategic direction for talent acquisition function and partners within the organization. She also leads the diversity, equity, and inclusion workforce strategy, implementing agile practices across talent acquisition to improve velocity with a product mindset and aligning the employer value proposition with a hybrid work environment. Prior to joining Pacific Life, Jennifer held various talent acquisition positions at the Capital Group, Northrop Grumman, and Dell Computer. So everyone, this is your starting lineup of panelists. And just a friendly note to the audience out there, you may have seen when you registered for this event that this panel is covering the topics of diversity, equity, inclusion, childcare, post-pandemic workplaces, and post-pandemic talent acquisition. And what makes this panel especially unique is that we will have 3 major employers and 3 very different industries who will all lend a very unique perspective on those topics. So, y'all ready? Let's get to it. All right, well, thank you so much, panelists, for joining us today. Personally, I couldn't be more excited about these topics. It's something that we talk about multiple times throughout the day right now. So let's get started where we left off. After listening to Dr. Walworth's presentation, what resonated with you? Anything that you found particularly interesting? Jennifer, would you like to start?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Robin, for the introductions. You know, it was great to see. Orange County has had this history of innovation and it continues. And what I'm excited about is that Orange County remains a talent hub that will help support Pacific Life's goals and initiatives as we move forward. So it was great data, and certainly resonated with me as far as what we're going to be, some of the talent we're going to be trying to attract to Pacific Life going forward.
Yeah, thank you. Chris?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. You know, I wasn't surprised by cybersecurity. I wasn't surprised by gaming. I was surprised by the ophthalmics part. I guess I hadn't really thought about the technology aspect, but it does make a lot of sense. You know, especially, you know, the point about the aging population, and as we push beyond 100, I wonder how many other industries will be developing technology for those of us who are lucky enough to, I guess, to live that long. So.
Thank you. And Nicole?
Yeah, I was really pleased to see all the universities and community colleges that are already offering programs to really get people prepared for these careers. So that was really exciting. And as a nonprofit organization, you know, we're focused on workforce development for more vulnerable populations, people who have barriers to employment, disabilities. So I'm excited to look at maybe opportunities on how we can create career paths for people who have barriers to employment. So that was something that, as I read it, got super excited about.
Yeah, I noticed that too, with the classes offered anywhere from the junior colleges, community colleges, up and all the way through. Okay, so as we sit here today, we are still grappling with the global pandemic. Many of us anticipated some form of being back in the office. I'm still here at home. We have some evolving workforce procedures, but for some, the Delta variant put a pause on all of that. Share with us the status of your organization's workforce policy. What will be your plans as we approach the months ahead? And please also take us through what factors are being considered as you make these decisions. So let's go in reverse order. Let's start with you, Nicole.
All right. Well, we're a diverse workplace. So we have about 1,200 employees. So we range from retail, e-commerce positions, and then also human services, more social work positions for workforce development. And so it really depends on the function of the position. Some positions are required to be in person, as you can imagine, collecting, processing donations, selling those donations in our stores. You know, that's an in-person job. And then our social services, it also is dependent on the function. So we're just trying to be as flexible as possible. We also have an e-commerce division called shopgoodwill.com. And that's a completely virtual business. Even before the pandemic, while they worked in our office here in Orange County, you know, they went completely virtual when the pandemic hit, and they're staying virtual. So we have everything across the map happening in my organization. And I think flexibility is really the key word, and offering hybrid work for those who want it. I'm a huge fan of that and believe in it.
Mm-hmm. I'm a believer now too. Shopgoodwill.com. Good to learn. I just wrote that down. Chris, talk to us about how you're doing things with workforce,
Sure, Robin.
workplace policies. Yeah.
Yeah, so, I think like a lot of employers, we are also an employer that employs a large variety of different types of employees. We've got 8,000 employees. I think, through the pandemic, about half our workforce continued to report daily on site, as you might imagine, the gas company worker that comes to your house, the folks that are doing construction in the streets, those are jobs that just can't be done remotely. But the other half of our workforce has been largely remote. I think like a lot of employers, we've continued to push the needle down, right? We thought we would be back in May, then we pushed it to September. Now we're looking to return to the office for those of us who are working remotely in January. And what's it going to look like? It'll look like what I think a lot of employers are thinking about is some sort of a hybrid model. And I think, some of the thinking there goes to, one, this has been a terrific experiment, right? We have learned something we didn't know we could do in terms of remote work, especially with the technology that we have now to be able to be effective. And our employees have adjusted. At first it was a huge adjustment to be home, right? To have your kids running around, to have your dogs barking in the background of meetings. And now we've all adjusted to these work schedules. And I think, for a lot of employees, it really works. So, as an employer, we want to keep this going because one, we're seeing from applicants, these are questions that are being asked of us, is do you offer remote or hybrid options? So we know that talent is going to be looking for that as an option going forward. One of the things we're also really concerned about is, we have we're a 150-year-old company. We have a tight, a culture that I think is really important to maintain. And so one of the things we thought about in terms of having a fully remote workforce is, would we be able to long-term maintain the culture if we didn't have employees interacting? So, our return to work is 2 days in the office, at least, and 3 days out. And we do want people to kind of be on both. We don't want everyone back at the office, and we don't want everyone, fully remote. So that'll be the mix going long term. I'm sure, as the years go by, we will continue to adjust that and tweak it to find the optimal workplace model. But I think we're pretty excited about this as a long-term solution for us. And by the way, I will note that, while we would have in the past, we have a culture where working at home a few days a week was an okay thing. We didn't offer that to our union represented employees, but through the pandemic, we have experimented with larger groups. Our call center now is largely remote. And so that's made a big difference for, a sizable portion of our workforce. And it's really worked. We've seen productivity go up. We've seen attendance improve. So there are some metrics, I think, that show that these models can actually be overall good for the company.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. You touched on a lot there, Chris. It sounds too that you're just really staying flexible and fluid and really listening to your employees and to future employees through the applicant pool and just really keeping your ears open to what folks are seemingly needing and wanting. So thank you for that. Jennifer.
Yeah, Chris, a lot of what you just mentioned resonates with me too, as far as what we're doing at Pacific Life. But, just to back up a little bit, as we went out, with COVID, the first priority was the health and safety of our employees. And as we thought about the return to the office, we did phase in a small group of folks back in early summer, and then had to pivot due to the Delta variant. So went remote again, and now we're on track to phase back in some smaller groups of smaller teams starting in November. But it really has been about what's going to work best and keep our employees safe. And we're thinking about, I know we're going to probably get to some other questions that touch on some of these other topics, but we are, making sure that when we do return to the office, at least in the first phase, that the employees they must be vaccinated. So that is a requirement for this initial phase.
And can you talk a little bit more about that? Is that?
So it's a phase one, and again, it's about ensuring that we have a safe work environment, and we also want the environment to feel collaborative and not be so restrictive that we can't be in the office to do the things that we think can be most effective of being in the office, and that's kind of that collaboration, innovation, and celebration. So in order to do that, we don't want people to feel like they have to wear a mask everywhere they go. So by having folks vaccinated, we can provide that environment initially, and we hope, at some point then, as we continue down this journey that, we'll have some flexibility there, but that's the initial phase.
Yeah, thank you so much for expanding on that. And also, as Chris mentioned, I mean, culture and then connectivity and those relationships and collaboration are so important. That makes such a difference when you're face to face.
Yeah.
So thank you all. You did mention it a little bit, Chris, about productivity. So the next question's around how has your organization's productivity been impacted by the pandemic? And what tools and tactics have you deployed to maximize productivity? Let's see. I'll just open it up. Who wants to go first?
I can start, Robin.
Okay.
So we actually, prior to COVID, had embarked on a digital transformation, and with going remote, obviously that increased the velocity of our transformation. So it was, as Chris kind of described, a great pilot for us to jump into some of the tools we started to use, but the adoption obviously increased. And what we saw was really high productivity, being able for our employees to meet both short and long-term goals. And we actually feel like we have the opposite problem where we're not finding folks taking the time and taking the breaks that are needed in order to recharge. And a lot of discussion around, burnout and making sure that, you can separate the work from home, even though your office is in your home. And we've done things such as instituted rejuvenation days. So once a month, having the entire company take a rejuvenation day so that you don't come back to, even if you take time off, everyone else is still working and you still get all those emails and you come in and you feel like you got to catch up. With the rejuvenation days, it's really allowed everyone to take a break. And we've seen really good benefit from that as we've instituted those days. But as far as some of the tools we're using, the Microsoft suite of tools has been really effective for us. Everything from Teams, we certainly leverage Zoom for those video meetings and asynchronous collaboration. But a lot of adoption of some of the newer tools like MS Forms, Power Automate, Power BI, from our data and analytics standpoint. So it's been a great evolution to see how much we've progressed over the past 18 months.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Jennifer. Rejuvenation Day, I love it. I think I'll start with a rejuvenation moment today sometime. Yeah, thank you for that. Chris.
Yes.
Would you like to share next?
Absolutely, Jennifer. You touched on another really important point, which is employee burnout. It's interesting. So I mentioned productivity before, and I would say on the whole, employees have been more productive. Now, we don't always measure in all areas, but we do, for example, in our call center, we have a lot of metrics for how long it takes to take a call and to address a customer's needs. And so we've seen numbers go up. We've seen employees also sort of improve performance because some of the ability to continue to work remote means sustaining, good performance and productivity. And so employees have certainly met the challenge, which tells us there's a desire to continue to have that flexibility and that ability. We've also seen decreases in just leave times, right? The taking sick time, taking other leave times, taking vacation time, which is a challenge because we want employees to take vacation time. So we really have to encourage people to take time off and to take those vacations. And certainly, the length of hours, right? Most of us start earlier, but we don't have the commute. Many of us are working later, also because we don't have the commute, but we also have that in-between time now that you didn't really have in the day to schedule more intermittent things that might be personal, a contractor, things like that happen, or, Zoom for kids and things like that at school. So those have really been advantages to this new model. By the way, in terms of tools, I will say one thing. Certainly, we're using a lot more tools. We use Microsoft Teams and things of that nature, but we now have our employee town halls that are done through Microsoft Live, where we used to get maybe 25 or 50 people to an HR meeting. We have over 1,000 people that show up to these town halls. So, going forward, this is a terrific model for getting information out to employees and then also getting questions back real time. So it's a terrific resource.
Yeah, I love that. And more engagement and two-way dialogue. That's fantastic. Nicole, I see you.
Yes, so many of the same ideas, but I would add, we're experiencing staff shortages just like many other companies. And so, but what's interesting is despite that, our retail stores are 26% ahead of where we were in 2019 when we looked at the month of September. So pretty phenomenal results. I mean, everybody's working extremely hard. And I think some of the ways our retail team, they're being creative in terms of moving people around to different locations as needed. It's been a real challenge, but we haven't had to close stores. Obviously, we had to work on the operating hours. They're not the same as prior to the pandemic. So that was a tool there, reducing the hours. And then as well, I think from my perspective as a leader, we're really doubling down on our employee engagement and communication and anything that we can do to appreciate, communicate. We've even started listening sessions where, we're having groups of team members come together from, whether it be retail or human services or other administrative positions, and just share with us, hey, what's working? What could we do better? What are your ideas? And then we'll summarize those conversations so leadership can hear them. And then we put together some actions on, okay, what could we solve? We can't maybe solve every idea that we hear, or every problem that comes across, but we're really trying to do more to just show people that they're valued and appreciated. And I think that's important for all of us as leaders.
Most definitely. We are in the middle of Employee Appreciation Week right now, and there's been a lot of virtual kudos and creative kudos going on. So thanks for that reminder, Nicole. Let's see. Okay, so this also was touched on, but kind of want to go into a little bit more. But there are occupations that don't require being physically present. And have you noticed, and I've seen it around here, have you noticed an increase in employees relocating out of Orange County or Southern California? And how has this new environment changed your talent recruitment and attraction strategies and tactics? Nicole, I'm gonna kick it off with you.
Sure. This isn't a huge issue for us, but I will say it's come up a couple times for an organization our size with most of our operations in Orange County. Our e-commerce team, we actually had somebody, a long-term employee, amazing, productive person, and she said, hey, I want to move to the East Coast. Could I still, work for Goodwill of Orange County, have this job with shopgoodwill.com? And we said, 100%, let's make it happen. So she's in Richmond, Virginia. And the great thing, because that business supports Goodwills across the country, she's traveling half the time anyway. So there was no problem. So I think, again, the name of the game for us is flexibility, and where it can be made possible, we want to do that for people. But certainly it helped us retain this particular employee. And I think we would also have openness to attracting, especially in that e-commerce area, attracting talent for that business from other areas. And I think it's an option that, we never would have considered before the pandemic. And here we are. And I think it's a good thing.
What a terrific example of retention, and then looking over at potential recruitment as well. Jennifer, would you like to share your thoughts on there and experiences?
Yeah. So we definitely have seen people in our Southern California, our Newport Beach office and Aliso Viejo offices relocate outside of California. I wouldn't say it's huge numbers, but certainly some have. And then we've also seen even folks who are in the field or were previously remote are moving. So it's been a little bit of both. And what I would add on the attraction piece is prior to the pandemic, we were really trying to get leadership and hiring managers to consider the talent where they are at rather than trying to relocate them to Southern California in some cases. And what this new environment has offered us is our managers now are experienced managing remotely. And so they're really open to considering hiring talent. To be clear, no intention of company. We will lean into employee preference, and we'll be working in a hybrid environment as we return to the office. But we also, there are pockets, and forgive me if I'm getting the unstable internet connection, so apologize if I cut out. But there are some areas where we need to focus on, some critical functions where we need to focus on where the talent sits in the country. And sometimes that's not here in Southern California.
Love that. It sounds like everyone's just really leaning in openly to employee preferences and balancing that together with the business needs in a creative way. Let's see. Nicole. Wait, no, Chris.
Me.
Hey there.
So the gas company does business just in California. So we actually have a policy where we don't allow employees to work in other states, and it has a lot to do with just having to pay employer taxes in other states. And there are some states where it's very, very expensive if you have just one employee. So we have a policy, but that doesn't allow it. But I will say, like others, we have gotten a surge of requests from employees who are looking for that flexibility to work in other areas, whether it's closer to family or whether it's someplace much more exotic than Los Angeles. But I will say that we do have a lot of employees who have sort of relocated temporarily within California. So I know lots of people who have taken off to the mountains, gone up to Mammoth and worked for a month, which is totally fine under our policy. And I know many people who have gone to be closer to family and they're continuing to work, but they're closer to their parents. And so that does give people that kind of flexibility. And maybe that's why they're not taking all that vacation time because they're able to work in those other areas. And as I mentioned before, we've definitely seen an increase in the number of candidates from other places, lots of candidates from the East Coast where we previously wouldn't really get applicants from. So that has certainly changed.
Wow. I was one of those that was able to go to Mammoth for a little bit. That was nice. What are some ways your companies have, let's keep going with the employee support. What are some ways your companies have supported employees from a more comprehensive wellness and benefits perspective? So Nicole, would you like to go first?
Sure. So as a nonprofit, and I think, nonprofits and also smaller businesses can relate, we don't have a huge budget to do this. So we try to be really creative. And I think from that standpoint, we really emphasize that our team members take advantage of the employee assistance program. And so we constantly communicate about it, talk about it, make sure people are aware of the free benefits that are in that EAP program. We've also curated many free resources in the community, other nonprofits, other things that we see that can benefit our workforce. We've even partnered with the Second Harvest Food Bank of Orange County to do a free monthly food distribution. And so that's been hugely beneficial as well. And then lastly, I would say we had the Orange County Healthcare Agency come and speak to our team and do a session on mental health and all the various free resources out there in the community. I think all employers need to be aware that mental health is a huge issue and factor, and I think we have to pay attention to it. We've had some serious things happen with our employees that we just want to make sure they know the resources are there. There's no stigma to this. It's important that everybody get the help they need.
Yeah, definitely. We've been reinforcing the programs that exist today. So the EAP program, I love the OC Mental Health, and providing, resources and support in that way. Let's see. Chris, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I actually oversee our wellness department, and pre-pandemic, we offered backup childcare through Bright Horizons. I think it's 10 days per year. We obviously offered EAP services. We had lots of fitness programs. Around July 2020, we, like many other employers and our employees, started to see that schools were likely not to reopen in the fall. And so we formed a task force to try to figure out how we were going to support our employees who were, one, going through a lot of uncertainty, and then if the schools weren't going to reopen, how were they going to manage balancing work and that virtual school that was likely to be the model. So what we did is we put together I think about a 40-page book called the SoCalGas Family Guidebook, and we developed a whole series of work flexibility options, and this included for our frontline union represented employees who do need to report to work locations. And so we offered things like 3-day work weeks where you might work 12 hours and have 2 days off if that might fit your schedule, or 4-10s. We also offered people the ability to work reduced hours and still maintain full-time benefits. And then we started to put together a lot of other services, parent support services, educational services. We continue to offer and provide things like nanny, backup nanny services, although a lot of people were still reluctant to let some stranger come into their house in the midst of the pandemic. But there were also opportunities to help parents sort of form little pods for purposes of educating their kids. And so we helped people connect, who were working or living close together. And packaging all of the programs, a lot of things that we had previously offered, but packaging them into a book where parents could say, I've got 2 hours of Zoom school or 4 hours of Zoom school. What are my kids going to do the rest of the 4 hours while I'm sitting at my desk? So we put a lot of services, kids activities, educational activities, and just sort of grouped them all by age. So parents would have quick and easy resources. And then along the same lines of the flexibility, knowing that schools were often, from 9 to 11, the parent needs, mom or dad needs to take time off. We were letting, this is largely an impact for hourly employees, but allowing a person to say work from 7 to 9, take 2 hours off, address their school needs, come back to work after. That was a huge benefit for employees to be able to manage through the pandemic. And we continued a lot of those options through 2021, even though things and conditions started to change. But I can tell you the feedback from employees was tremendously positive, because they felt, from their employer, they felt the support that they needed, because we were all facing this, huge uncertainty. That's how we were going to manage both school and work.
Yeah. I mean, you had a lot again in there, and I was taking a lot of notes. I think it's very creative, some of the solutions that you've come up with still providing full-time benefits, and again, listening to your colleagues and creating new, evolving, and emerging approaches. So pretty nice place to work, all of you. What else? Let's see. You did touch on childcare in addition to the workforce transformation, and in particular childcare. Jennifer, would you like to add something there? Yeah.
Yeah. Our support for our employees really has evolved as our situation has evolved. So if we, reflect back to when we first went out during COVID, it was immediately, how do we support our employees get set up in their home. So everything from an emergency monthly stipend so that we could support that, including offering $500 reimbursement for a desk and a chair. So those were kind of the immediate tactical pieces we had to get in place. But as it evolved, we really were thinking about, overall wellness of our employees and supporting them. So everything, a lot of things that, Chris and Nicole have been describing, but just from physical wellness, we put an app out there called Wellbeats. We provided support for parents that had school-aged children with one-on-one tutoring services. We also put in specific PTO related to COVID. Sometimes it was systems access, like you saw me jump off for a minute because my Wi-Fi went down. Sometimes that would happen for a day for people, so they weren't penalized because they didn't have system access, or if they did get COVID, that they weren't taking away from their normal sick time to have time off for COVID. And then I mentioned the rejuvenation days already, but those were some of the benefits we put in place. And then I would say, more importantly, really educating our leaders about providing flexibility for their employees and for the leaders themselves. And again, a lot of what Chris just mentioned around, with school-aged children or even elder care, how to support their families during this time. So just a lot of flexibility really has been effective for our organization.
Yeah, thank you. But we have two more questions planned for the panel and audience. I see there's a couple questions in the Q&A chat box. We definitely have saved time for them, and we'll get to them shortly. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in. So one other important subject coming out of the last 18 months is the renewed focus on the need to significantly improve diversity, equity, inclusion for many employers. So kind of big picture, how does your organization define DE&I? What's your mission and why is it important to your organization? So Nicole, why don't you kick us off on that one?
Yeah. I'll start first with why it's important. I think from our perspective as a nonprofit organization, we're focused on helping people who have barriers to employment, whether they have a disability, mental health challenge, veterans transitioning, you name it, justice involved. And from our perspective, it's really important that, we create a nurturing environment where all team members, program participants, and also community stakeholders are valued, heard, respected, and able to succeed. So it's part of our DNA as an organization. And I've made it one of my top priorities as a CEO. The board knows and the leadership team knows that this is important to me as CEO. And our team is making it a high priority.
Yeah, thank you for that. Chris.
Yeah, I think like a lot of employers, and certainly, Jennifer and Nicole, there were a lot of challenges that we faced in the last couple of years. And while the gas company has always invested heavily in our diversity initiatives, we really took the time to rethink if we were offering the right kinds of diversity initiatives, if our programs were meeting the needs of our employees. So, we undertook a whole series of new efforts. We created a lot of new positions in the diversity space. One thing to think about is we've got 8,000 employees and we serve 22 million customers in Southern California in 500 different communities. So, our employees are very diverse. Our customers are very diverse. Our employees are meeting with a diverse set of customers on a regular basis. So, I think from a overall perspective, we've spent a lot of time talking to our employees throughout the pandemic and still today about what, various diversity topics, inclusion topics, equity topics. We've spent a lot of time educating people about the differences between those three buckets. What does diversity mean? What does inclusion mean? And then what does now equity mean? And how are we as a company going to, to strive for those three different goals? And, the conversations can be challenging, no doubt, even in a virtual environment, they can be challenging. But they're important conversations. They can certainly derail and destabilize and detract from an employee's ability to feel included in a work group if he or she doesn't feel included, or looking for opportunities for promotion and moving people into management and directors and executive positions. What kind of equity measures need to be undertaken in order to make sure that there's a level playing field for everybody to move up. So those are all important efforts at the gas company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like how you're kind of sharing your process as well. It's, to reflect, assess, and refine the program so that you have the educational component and just, once again, listening. Jennifer, did you want to add what you're doing over there at Pacific Life?
Yeah, it was, that time was a great time too to reflect on what we've been doing. And, from a culture perspective, we want to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion that celebrates individuality of our employees, partners, customers, and community. And we want to create the sense of belonging. And one of the first steps we did was established an Enterprise Inclusion Council. And this is a functional group made up of employees across the organization, and they are the champions and supporters of our DEI efforts, and even helped us refine our vision and our mission and strategy around DEI. And they really are that voice. So they helped us facilitate everything from the listening sessions. We now have in place monthly diversity circles that provides additional education. Our employees all went through unconscious bias training. And we have established a number of working groups that support, whether that be our customer impact, community outreach, supplier diversity, employee engagement, and then just overall awareness and education. So a lot of momentum and efforts around it, but I would say most importantly that it's an environment where it's open and we can discuss and have the hard conversations, great support from our leadership as we move forward in our journey. But I would say it's absolutely a journey, and we're still at the beginning of that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Enterprise Inclusion Council, the training, all terrific components of ensuring, that your existing programs are remaining relevant, current, and stay within that, embedded in that culture, right? So as you think about your major goals for the next 3 to 5 years, and as you said, it's a journey, what DE&I policies do you have to achieve those goals? What measures of success do you have? What stakes have you put out there? Chris, can you start us off there?
Yeah, sure. I would say, we will continue to refine our short-term and long-term plans. Our focus is going to be, continuing to invest in diversity, both within our company and also with our community partners. I mean, we through our community relations programs and where we invest both our time, our employees' volunteer time, and then also our dollars, making sure that we're making those investments in our community to enhance diversity, which impacts our customers. It also impacts our employees who live in those communities. We are experimenting with some different ideas. We had for many years had an employee diversity and inclusion council that was just a single organization comprised of employees, from the gas company and our SDG&E and Sempra Energy are related companies. We're experimenting with more focused groups. We have 3 coming up. For example, we've got a group of Black employee, a Black employee group that we will pioneer. And this is by no means a group exclusive to our Black employees, but a group open to all of our employees, but to talk about issues that are particular and specific to things that our Black employees may be facing, whether at work or outside of work. So those will be interesting. These are pioneer programs that we're kind of treading into uncharted water, but but they may meet the needs that I was talking about before. These may help us achieve other goals that we previously hadn't realized. So there are some exciting opportunities. One other thing is, we are building into our incentive compensation plan achievement on diversity goals, so that there's a stake for those who are eligible for those incentive comp plans to make sure that the company does meet those goals each year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So the emergence of internal focus groups, maybe in a more deliberate way, and thank you for mentioning the scorecard piece of it as well, and the accountability there. Let's see, who's next?
I can share a little bit about our journey. We formed a task force last year, a cross-functional task force of team members to really educate our workforce about these issues, and also just learn about all the various resources that we have available to us to make sure we're going the next level with DEI. One of the things that they're currently conducting right now is a first ever DEI survey. We want to really hear from our workforce and understand, kind of get a baseline of where we are, so that when we create our goals, they're really based on this data we're getting from the survey. So that's going to be coming up soon. And then also we're going to be creating a DEI scorecard, just like Chris was mentioning. And one of the things we're going to challenge each department to come up with at least 1 or 2 initiatives that they could accomplish in the next year to move the needle on DEI. And then this will make this transparent, so that everybody knows, here's our action plan. And then here's also the initiatives for by each department. And this will be with the board of directors as well, because it's certainly important that, as CEO with the board, that we continue to make sure our board prioritizes DEI. We have a good start, but, we've got to make it an even higher priority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got to start here and permeate all the way throughout to be fully acculturated. Thank you, Nicole. And Jennifer.
Yeah, and that's a great segue, Robin. I was thinking about the leadership at the top, and wanted to highlight Jim Morris, our CEO, is part of the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. And so that's the largest CEO-driven effort, with over 1,000 CEOs from other companies, associations, and universities to advance diversity and inclusion within the workplace. So Jim is championing this effort along with our 2 retail division leaders, who are our champions for diversity. And so we will continue over, the more immediate term, maturing those kind of 5 functional groups around workforce, which is creating and retaining a more diverse workforce through equitable and inclusive practices. And that's the work group that I lead. And part of that, of course, is recruiting. And so we've recently launched a recruiting strategy, a diversity recruiting strategy that's focused on, how we source, how we assess, and how we bring folks on board. So it's everything from diversifying our candidate pools and minimizing bias in the recruiting process. So as we think about assessing, we've implemented a hiring manager, we'll call it a hiring manager learning journey. It's a just-in-time 30-minute online learning journey that they have to complete in order to start recruiting for their position. So they won't see candidates until they complete that learning journey. And then really engaging in those tough conversations during the calibration sessions as we think about minimizing that bias, and then making sure that our employer value proposition is articulated in a way that connects with individuals, that they want to come work for Pacific Life. So those are a couple, lots of efforts going on across the organization, but those are a couple that we're in the midst of right now.
That's interesting. I'm going to press it a little bit more, because you touched on some things. What would be more like an example of this, either the collaboration, the calibration that you're talking about, or one component of the hiring or the sound that you talked about, assessing, onboarding, sourcing. What's one of the ideas within that?
Yeah. So on the sourcing side, the research that we've done has really talked about the partnerships with your employee resource groups. So as Chris was talking about some of those groups that are ramping up, we're doing the same thing. So leveraging those employee resource groups to help tap into talent pools. Those are really sustainable sourcing efforts, as well as partnering with diversity organizations. So actuaries, for example, are a critical talent for Pacific Life. There's organizations, an International Association of Black Actuaries, that we're partnering with in order to better understand what are some of the challenges that these folks face, and how can we help from a development standpoint, but then also tap into that talent pool. So again, those are what we view as really sustainable long-term relationships that we can put in place in order to effectively source diverse candidates. And then from an assessment standpoint, it's so easy for our managers to hire people just like them. And those are folks they immediately make connections with, whether it's they went to the same university or they grew up in the same place. And when we hear those things as talent acquisition, we have to really bring it back to what does the position require in order to be successful, and challenge our leaders in having those conversations and really understanding what's attracting that candidate to them, and challenge it if it's feels like it might be a bit of bias in there.
Yeah, I really like that. So again, common themes, really listening closely, actively on internal, and then, going outside, partnering and stretching that zone.
Yeah.
For the hiring manager. So terrific. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's our final question before we go to Q&A from the audience. David and Marco, thank you for your patience there and your engagement virtually. So, panelists, what's the next big thing in your industry sector? Something that maybe we may not be aware of that educators may need to prepare students for? Certainly, Wallace gave us a lot to think about, futuristic and current. But what's that next big thing in your industry sector that we should be thinking along with you?
I'll go ahead.
Jennifer.
Oh, go ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
I love this question, and it's so great to see. I think we have quite a few participants here from the education sector, and for us, it really is those soft skills that, as we think about bringing in early career talent and working in the hybrid environment, the table stakes change. The ability to navigate in this new environment, which is going to include being able to deal with ambiguity, having resilience, having a growth mindset, which means a continuous learning, and help, being able to manage change. So if we can have our early career talent have some skills in that area, it's certainly going to help folks, join and be more effective more quickly. And we're certainly going to help support that, but it's something that's top of mind for us.
Soft skills matter. It's not just what you know, but how you go about, and your people and your leadership skills. I couldn't agree with you more. Nicole.
Yeah, I would say in the past, I think, nonprofit organizations, can be somewhat behind for-profit organizations in certain things. And one of them would be data analytics and having a data analyst. And I do think that what was once seen as a luxury is quickly becoming an essential part of our business. We just hired our first data analyst earlier this year, and it's a game changer to have him make sense of all this raw data that we have available to us, making sense of it, making it meaningful, creating scorecards that, our whole workforce can see, and it's visible and transparent in terms of our performance. I just think the nonprofit sector, it's going to become, the next big thing is needing those data analysts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. That reminds me, as a banker, right? Data, it's all about data. But I love that. And it reminds me of a conversation just yesterday about data is important, digital is important, but even more so the human element and creating that emotional connection across that is equally important as well to make it all come to life. So thank you for that, Nicole. And Chris, what would you like to add there about your next big thing?
Well, I think, it's probably no surprise that the energy industry is really thinking about a clean energy future. So SoCalGas is a natural gas company. And we have, we've set our own zero greenhouse gas emission goals that we're going to hit by 2045. And it's through a combination of different technologies. So it's renewable gas, which is taking methane captured from farms and landfill. So put those cows to work in different ways. And then also through hydrogen, which is really something that we're spending and investing a lot in terms of technology. And there are ways in which we can use those fuels, especially hydrogen, in ways that, we could store electricity from solar and from wind much longer than traditional chemical batteries, which, as everyone knows, have limits, right? You can only store energy in traditional batteries for so long. But we could really store, that all that sunlight that we get in the middle of the day that we can't use in the middle of the day, we can really store that for much longer periods using technologies like hydrogen. So that's where SoCalGas is going to spend the next 20 years investing in technology and really reshaping our business.
Wow, what a great spectrum of components that you all offered for all of us to consider. So thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to transition now to our Q&A box here, and we have a couple of questions. David Blair from the Boys and Girls Club, thank you so much again for your patience. I really like this one. So this is about how do you attract a young workforce who may or may not know about livable wage, entry-level jobs in your industry? How do we help connect the younger workforce and plug in within your businesses?
You want us to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. Yep. Yep.
Well, as my daughter tells me, you have to be in TikTok, social media, right? I joke, but it's so true. I think, the younger generation gets their information and their news from TikTok and other social media. But I do think, having an edge in that is important. So I know we've expanded our work in social media and making sure that young people, see us there. And we do have a fairly young workforce. We attract a lot of people who are in college and, working, on their education, and they work at one of our thrift stores, and it's a job that they have while they're going to school. So that's something that, we're really focused on, and just continuing to attract the younger generation.
Yeah. I have two young ones too, and definitely can relate to that, Nicole.
I would also add, just, the gas company invests a lot in and partners with a lot of community partners, both, groups that are working, especially in the STEM field. So, for the reasons I just mentioned in terms of all that hydrogen and those engineering projects, we're a company full of engineers. We're always looking for engineers in a variety of engineering fields. So we invest heavily in STEM education and partner with local schools to be able to build those programs and to bring more students, and also starting earlier, right? You've got to start earlier with these programs so that you can build up a more diverse population of employees, especially females, to go into those fields. So that's been a big focus of ours. We have a pretty young workforce, in part because we're also bringing a lot of people in from the construction industry, and You know, I think it's a place where people can start out in positions with very little background and experience, and you know, all the training is done on the job. So we'll train you to do a lot of these positions, and you know, they're well-paid positions. So they're places where people may not traditionally think that was their career path, but once they get in, they realize it's work that they may really like, and then there are lots of opportunities to move around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. I was also thinking, and Jennifer, I'll pivot over to you as well, is, you know, Nicole, you were talking about TikTok, and my teenage daughter, they're all entering into the workforce, and a lot of it also is work, and I guess it's word of mouth, right? The social media. And so it reminded me that we have a very robust employee referral program as well, because, you know, birds of a feather flock together. So that reminded me as well. But Jennifer, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so we have early career talent programs. We have a university relations function, and you know, some of our functions do require specific education and certifications, and we're looking into how do we continue to partner, whether that be we're working with an organization called Diversity in Wholesaling, and this is in financial services, and they're targeting, it's a coalition. We're working together with a number of other insurance companies on identifying talent from HBCUs to get them the certifications they need and the education they need to go into these entry-level sales positions, in combination with a internship program for our actuaries that lead into our full-time rotation program. And then we also have a summer internship for data analytics. So those are ways that we are, you know, cultivating that early career talent and get those pipelines into the organization.
Yeah, a good combination of education and practical, you know, experience right there. That's fantastic.
Yep.
One more question here. We have Marco Lucero. Thank you. We did touch on culture a bit. How do you convey or instill company culture and values in a purely telework arrangement with a new employee? I know you talked a lot about, you know, inquiring about and interviewing for soft skills. What are the tools and techniques for really ensuring that that new recruit culturally is a good fit for your organization?
Yeah, you know, I did talk a little bit about culture, and I think, you know, among the challenges in a more remote workforce, culture is probably one of the hardest. I think the technology has made us productive. You know, we can use SharePoint, we can collaborate, but the culture part really requires a lot of attention. And so, you know, I think we have throughout this pandemic, you know, tried to make the retirement celebrations that we're all once together, do them virtually because it's safer, and try to be as creative as possible, whether it's virtual games and activities and so forth. You know, I think, you know, we have some creative people who have done terrific jobs with these programs, but I will say it's really hard to replace the in-person aspects that really you know, help develop culture. I mean, in the past, you could pop by a peer's office to ask a work-related question and then spend 20 more minutes talking about purely personal things. And when you now have to set up a meeting to have a conversation, you tend not to do that. So, you know, I do think that's a lot of why we're moving in this hybrid direction, so that we have periods of time when we are all physically together, to make sure that we don't lose those aspects of what are really critical to developing culture.
Yes, yes. Jennifer, I see your...
Yeah. Yeah, no, a lot of what Chris just said really resonates with what we're doing at Pacific Life, or thinking about at Pacific Life as well. And, you know, I mentioned earlier, you know, we do want to think about being in the office as that time to collaborate, innovate, and celebrate.
Yeah.
And those, we're looking forward to getting back to those opportunities. And same thing, we've had some really creative things happen over the past 18 months, some of which are going to stay intact. You know, everything from, we have a, you know, internal social media network that we leverage in order to kind of keep the engagement high and try to put in some of that fun aspect into, you know, that we could be missing from those in-person visits. I think, you know, I would say our focus is also on culture add. So not only thinking about our existing culture, but what can also benefit our culture going forward. You know, it really goes back to that, you know, DEI conversation and enhancing what we're going to be for the future. And that includes diversity of thought and, you know, injecting folks with different ideas into the organization. So.
You know, thank you so much. You know, we have years and years ago, you reminded me, we did some studies and we were looking at the Disney way. And, you know, we have a fellow board member on OCBC from Disney, but they would actually have, and I don't know if they still do this today, but one thing we took from them is for a recruit, they would have another hiring manager completely not part, you know, is not related to the role, and just separately would interview the candidate for cultural fit, because they weren't, you know, pressed for filling this chair, but really just focusing on, you know, is this person a cultural fit for us here? So it kind of removes that bias from the hiring manager potentially. So that's one thing that I just thought of that we regularly do. So the final question before
that reminds me of something. We actually did pioneer using diverse panels for candidates. So the panel, you know, it has to be at least a 3-person panel, but it has to be a diverse panel. And that's a lot of it. I think a lot of it was, you know, one, making sure you limit those biases that can come with people who are, you know, very similar, right? But also from the candidate's experience, having that first view of what is this company like? Does this company have people like me at this company? Does it have a diverse group of people at this company? So I think that's an important component.
Yeah, thank you for that add-in, Chris. So the final question before we wrap up, the never-ending pursuit for work-life balance, right? So it was touched on earlier. Thank you, David, again, from Boys and Girls Club. How do you encourage a better work-life balance for those now working from home, since many employees, as you mentioned, blend work hours with their home life and tend to really extend the workday? So what do you do to encourage a better work-life balance?
I think we're still learning.
Yeah.
I think we're still learning. I think part of it is that I actually like the term better work-life integration, because I don't think we'll ever be completely balanced, right? And so I think that we're still learning every day. And I think it's really paying attention to, if we see that a colleague is burnt out and needs a break, like encouraging them, hey, you know what, you should take a day off. You should take the rest of the afternoon off. Is just really using our empathetic skills to make sure that, you know, people are going to be okay. I think and really taking time to, you know, assess that, you know, with our direct reports and with our leadership, making sure that they're paying attention to those cues with people. I think it's really on an individual basis right now, because we're still learning.
Definitely love that. Workforce integration and transformation.
There's actually a book called 9 Lies About Work. And one of the chapters is that work-life balance is a myth, that there is no such thing. And it's I think in part because, or largely, you know, what Nicole just said, you know, work is as much a part of your life as all the other things that happen before and after work, right? Or throughout the course of your day. So, you know, a more important focus should be finding things you love to do for work, right? If you love what you're doing, you know, you maybe don't feel that same pull from those things outside of work that you love, and then having to do all the tasks work related. Now, that being said, you know, I think it is important for companies to help employees to feel comfortable defining barriers. You know, having the leadership say it's acceptable to have a start time and an end time to a work day, or, you know, don't have meetings during lunch, or if you need 3 or 4 hours blocked off on a Wednesday morning just so that you can think and you know, get ahead, feel comfortable doing things like that. I think those are all important, especially as we're working in our homes.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. All right, so gosh, audience, thank you so much for your interest today and this morning. Thank you, Nicole, Chris, and Jennifer for this wonderful discussion. And now I'll just turn it back over to Sherry to close us all out.
Okay, thank you again, Robin, for being such an excellent moderator. Thank you to our brilliant panelists and Dr. Walrod and our sponsors. This clearly proves that when we bring the right people together to talk about some subjects, we can really learn a lot and accomplish more together and make Orange County keep its competitive edge. I hope you found as informative as I did. I have a couple of takeaways with obviously Orange County is well positioned. I was very impressed with our educational sector being on the cutting edge with all these programs already for the jobs of the future. And it's pretty evident how creative and how our employers are taking on totally new roles and venturing into new territories to support our teammates with wellness, the way they're looking at employee engagement and making sure we're competitive with D&I. And it starts at the top. You have to have the right leaders to drive all of the right messages. So I know it's been hard in the pandemic. We've learned a lot, but we're going to be more resilient than ever before. And again, thank you for all of you taking time out for today, your sponsors, panelists, and enjoy the rest of your morning. See you next year.
Thanks, Sherry.
Bye.
Thanks again. Thank you, panelists. Awesome.
Thank you. Bye.